The conference room door slammed open like a gunshot in the quiet hum of the morning meeting, and Rose felt her heart stutter as every head turned toward the intruder. Mr. Hargrove, the grizzled board member with a face carved from years of cutthroat deals, pointed a trembling finger straight at her and Clara, his voice cracking through the air like dry lightning. "You too," he spat. "Your filthy little secret ends today. Right here in this godforsaken company you've poisoned with your disgrace." Rose's fingers tightened around the edge of the table, the cool glass biting into her palm as the words hung there, heavy and unyielding. She glanced at Clara, the woman whose quiet strength had pulled her through sleepless nights of doubt, and saw the flicker in those green eyes, a storm brewing behind the calm facade. The room fell silent, save for the distant honk of taxis far below in the Manhattan streets, and Rose wondered if this was how it ended, not with a whisper, but with a shout that shattered everything they had built. Clara rose slowly from her chair at the head of the table, her movements deliberate, like the unfolding of a plan long held in secret. No one spoke as she straightened her blazer, the fabric whispering against her skin, and fixed her gaze on Hargrove with the steady resolve of someone who had stared down worse than boardroom betrayals. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice low and even, laced with the faint drawl of her Texas roots that surfaced only in moments like this, "today is not the day for your judgments, because I have something to say that changes everything." Rose had always known loving Clara would come at a cost, but she never imagined it would unravel in the fluorescent glow of a high-rise office overlooking the Hudson. They had met 3 years ago, in the chaotic swirl of a freelance gig that turned into something more, Rose sketching logos on napkins while Clara nursed a whiskey neat and talked about dreams bigger than the skyline. Rose was 29 then, fresh from a small town in Ohio where secrets like theirs were buried under layers of pretense, her days now filled with the click of her stylus on digital canvases, turning abstract ideas into visuals that sold dreams to the world. Clara, 34 and already climbing the corporate ladder with the grace of someone born to lead, had built her career on instinct and grit, her office a sanctuary of leather-bound books and city maps pinned to walls like battle plans. Their relationship bloomed in stolen moments, a brush of hands in crowded elevators, late-night walks along the High Line where the city lights blurred into constellations. Rose loved the way Clara's laugh cut through the noise, a rare sound that made her feel seen, truly seen for the first time. But work was their shared ground, the agency where Rose freelanced full-time now, a mid-sized creative firm teetering on the edge of irrelevance in a market hungry for innovation. Clara had taken the helm as CEO 6 months prior, her vision a lifeline thrown to a drowning crew, promises of reinvention whispered in strategy sessions that Rose attended with sketches in hand. That morning as the team gathered for the quarterly review, the air had crackled with unspoken tension. Projects were late, clients restless, and whispers of layoffs slithered through the vents like smoke. Rose sat beside Clara, their knees brushing under the table in a silent reassurance, her portfolio open to a new campaign that could, maybe, turn the tide. Then Hargrove burst in, his face flushed from whatever rage had simmered overnight, clutching a grainy photo printed from some anonymous email, the two of them caught in a kiss outside a Brooklyn cafe, lips soft and unapologetic under the autumn leaves. "Disgrace," he repeated, slamming the photo down, his voice rising like a tide. "This is what happens when you let personal perversions run the ship. We all suffer for it, Clara. The investors are pulling out, the numbers are bleeding red, and now this? You've dragged us into the mud with your unnatural choices." A murmur rippled through the room, colleagues shifting in their seats, eyes darting between the photo and the women it captured. Rose felt heat rise in her cheeks, a familiar shame twisting in her gut, the kind that echoed her father's sermons back home. Words like sin and correction drilled into her bones. She wanted to shrink, to vanish into the patterned carpet, but Clara's hand found hers under the table, a squeeze that said, "Hold on. Just hold on." Clara stepped forward then, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, the sound measuring out the seconds like a metronome. She picked up the photo not with anger, but with a tenderness that made Rose's throat tighten. "This," she said, holding it up for all to see, "this is not a disgrace. This is love. And if you think it weakens us, Hargrove, you're more blind than I realized." The room held its breath, the city's pulse throbbing faintly through the windows, a reminder that life churned on outside these walls. Clara set the photo down gently, as if it were a fragile artifact, and turned to the team, her voice steady but threaded with something raw. Something that spoke of nights spent pacing her apartment, weighing the cost of truth. I brought you all here today not to defend my heart, but to show you what it built. Rose, she said, turning to her with eyes that softened just for a moment, stand with me. Rose rose on unsteady legs, her heart pounding a rhythm of fear and fire, and together they faced the room, hands clasped openly now, no more hiding in shadows. The air felt thicker, charged, as if the very oxygen waited for what came next. Clara's confession unfolded like a map long folded in her pocket, each word a coordinate leading back to the brink they had all skirted. It started 6 months ago, she explained, her voice carrying the weight of those endless hours, when the agency was hemorrhaging clients faster than she could staunch the flow. Sleepless nights in her corner office, staring at spreadsheets that mocked her with red ink, the kind that stained dreams indelible. She had confided in Rose over takeout in her loft, the city lights painting their faces in neon hues, Rose's hand on her knee a anchor in the storm. You can't save it alone, Rose had whispered, her fingers tracing patterns on Clara's thigh, patterns that spoke of trust, of partnership beyond the boardroom. And in that vulnerability something shifted. They brainstormed not as boss and employee, but as lovers, equals in the quiet hours when the world slept. Rose's designs, infused with the raw emotion she poured into every stroke, captured essences that spreadsheets never could, turning pitches into stories that resonated, that sold. Clara paused, her breath catching, a soft sigh escaping as she glanced at Rose, their eyes meeting in a language only they spoke. Together, she continued, we redesigned the core campaign for Evergreen Foods, the one that was slipping away. Rose's visuals breathed life into it, made it human, made it matter. And because of that, because of us, we didn't just keep the client. We gained 3 more in the fallout, partnerships that stabilized us, that gave us room to breathe. Hargrove snorted, crossing his arms over his barrel chest, but Clara pressed on, her words gaining momentum, a river carving through stone. You see the numbers improving, she said, gesturing to the screen behind her where charts climbed like vines toward sunlight. But you don't see the cost. The doubt that gnawed at me, the fear that loving her would cost me everything. Yet here we are, not because I hid but because I didn't. Because Rose reminded me that strength isn't in solitude. It's in connection, in the courage to be whole. The team leaned forward, some nodding, others wide-eyed. The initial shock thawing into something like understanding. Sarah from accounting wiped at her eyes, a quiet sniffle breaking the hush, while Tom the copywriter uncrossed his legs, his skepticism cracking like thin ice. Rose felt a tremor in her chest, pride mingling with the ache, her free hand pressing against her ribs as if to steady the flutter. But Hargrove wasn't done. His face twisted, veins bulging at his temples. Pretty words, Clara, but actions speak louder. You think a kiss fixes bankruptcy? You think your bedroom games save jobs? Prove it or step aside. Clara's grip tightened on Rose's hand, a pulse of warmth that grounded her, and she nodded once, resolute. Then follow me, she said, leading them all out of the conference room, down the elevator to the lobby where cabs idled like yellow beetles under the overcast sky. The group spilled onto the sidewalk, coats buttoned against the chill November wind whipping off the river, and Clara hailed a van, her voice brooking no argument as she directed them toward the ferry terminal. The ride to Staten Island was a blur of hushed conversations and sidelong glances. Rose pressed against Clara's side in the back seat, inhaling the faint scent of her perfume, jasmine and resolve. What are we doing? She murmured, her lips brushing Clara's ear. Trust me, Clara replied, her thumb stroking Rose's knuckles, a rhythm that echoed their first dance at a rooftop bar, bodies swaying to jazz under starless skies. They disembarked at the terminal, the group trailing like uncertain shadows, the ferry chugging away behind them toward the distant Manhattan spires. Clara led them along the waterfront path, where gulls wheeled overhead and the water slapped against weathered piers, the air salty and sharp. Here, she said, stopping at a nondescript warehouse with peeling paint and a rusted chain-link fence, this is where it started. She unlocked the gate with a key from her pocket, the click echoing like a secret revealed, and ushered them inside. The space was a cavern of forgotten potential, canvases stacked against walls, half-finished mock-ups draped in dust sheets, relics from the agency's leaner days. In the center stood a massive storyboard, Rose's handiwork, panels bursting with color and narrative, the evergreen campaign in its raw, unpolished glory. This, Clara said, pulling back a sheet to reveal prototypes of ads that had never seen the light of day. This was the spark. Rose and I came here after hours when the office felt like a cage. We worked through the night, her ideas flowing like water, mine shaping them into strategy. And in those moments when frustration peaked and tears came, we'd hold each other, remember why we fought. Rose stepped forward, her voice soft but steady, the words tumbling out as if uncoiling from deep within. I was scared too, she admitted, meeting Hargrove's glare without flinching. Scared that my love for her would be the thing that broke us. But it didn't. It mended. Every line I drew, every color I chose, carried a piece of that mending. And now look at us. Not broken but building. The group murmured, fingers trailing over the panels, eyes lighting with recognition of the genius that had been overlooked. Hargrove stood apart, his arms loosening, the fight draining from his posture like air from a punctured tire. Clara turned to him then, her expression not triumphant but weary, human. You called it disgrace, she said quietly. But it saved us. All of us. Because in loving her, I found the clarity to lead. To fight for something real. A long pause stretched, broken only by the distant cry of a gull, and then Sarah stepped forward, her voice thick. She's right. Those ads they pulled from this? They're why my team has bonuses this quarter. I didn't know. I'm sorry. One by one, nods rippled through the group, a tide turning, and Hargrove, after a beat that felt eternal, exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping. Fine, he muttered, but there was no venom left, only the grudging acceptance of a man outmaneuvered by truth. We move forward. Together. As the group filed out, chattering now with renewed energy, Rose and Clara lingered, the warehouse suddenly intimate in the fading light. Rose turned to her, tears welling unbidden, and pulled her close, their foreheads touching as breaths mingled. You did it, she whispered, her voice cracking on the edge of awe. You stood up. We did, Clara replied, her arms wrapping around Rose's waist, holding tight against the world's pull. And well, keep standing. For each other. For this. They emerged into the twilight, the fairy lights twinkling like promises across the water, and for the first time in days Rose breathed easy, the weight lifting like fog burned off by dawn. The ferry back to Manhattan cut through the darkening waters, its deck a mosaic of quiet conversations and stolen glances, the city's glow rising like a beacon on the horizon. Rose leaned against the railing, the chill wind tugging at her hair, Clara's coat draped over her shoulders like a shield woven from shared secrets. The confrontation in the warehouse had left an ache in her chest. Not of pain but of release, the kind that follows a storm when the sky clears to reveal stars you forgot were there. Clara joined her, slipping an arm around her waist, their bodies fitting together with the ease of habit, two pieces of a puzzle long since completed. You okay? She murmured, her breath warm against Rose's temple. Rose nodded, though the nod came slow, weighted with the day's residue. Think so. It's just, everything feels exposed now, like we can't go back to pretending. Clara's sigh was soft, a release of tension she had carried alone for too long, her fingers tracing idle circles on Rose's hip. We wouldn't want to. Pretending was killing me piece by piece. Loving you openly? That's the only life worth living. They stood like that as the ferry docked, the group dispersing into the night with handshakes and half-formed apologies, promises to grab coffee, to talk more. Hargrove lingered at the edge, his eyes meeting Clara's with a nod that spoke volumes unspoken. A bridge extended over the chasm of his earlier words. Drive safe, he said gruffly, and then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Back in Clara's apartment in Chelsea, the space felt different, larger somehow, the walls no longer closing in but opening to possibility. It was a loft with exposed brick and windows that framed the city like living art, bookshelves groaning under volumes of poetry and business tomes, a king-size bed piled with throws that smelled of lavender and home. Rose kicked off her shoes, padding barefoot across the hardwood, her body humming with exhaustion and something electric beneath it. Clara poured wine, 2 glasses of Cabernet that caught the lamplight like rubies, and they sank onto the couch, legs tangled, the silence comfortable now, laced with the unspoken gratitude of survivors. "Tell me about Ohio again," Clara said after a sip, her head resting on Rose's shoulder, fingers interlacing with hers. "The parts you skipped before." Rose hesitated, the wine loosening the knots in her memory, and then the words came slow at first, then in a gentle flood. "The summers were endless," she began, "fireflies in jars on the porch, my dad's voice booming from the pulpit about paths straight and narrow. I drew to escape, sketches of women with wings, hidden in notebooks under my mattress. Coming out felt like jumping without a net, but you caught me." Clara's eyes glistened, her free hand cupping Rose's cheek, thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. "I'm honored," she whispered, leaning in until their lips met, soft and unhurried. A kiss that tasted of salt and vintage grapes. It deepened slowly, hands roaming with familiarity, mapping curves known by heart, breaths quickening in the quiet room. They moved to the bedroom as if drawn by gravity, clothes shedding like old skins, Clara's blazer tossed over a chair, Rose's shirt unbuttoned with fingers that trembled not from cold, but from the intensity of being wanted, truly wanted. Under the sheets their bodies spoke what words could not, a language of sighs and whispers, of arches and releases that built like waves crashing on a distant shore. Rose lost herself in the warmth of Clara's skin, the way her name sounded on those lips, a prayer in the dark. Afterward, tangled in limbs and linens, Rose traced the freckles across Clara's collarbone, each one a constellation she had charted 100 times. "What now?" she asked, her voice muffled against the pillow. "The agency, the board, us." Clara propped herself on an elbow, her hair a dark cascade over one shoulder, eyes serious but soft. "Now we live it. No more shadows. And tomorrow we go to the office as we are, hands held if we want, because they saw today what I always knew. You're my strength, Rose. Our love is the foundation." Sleep came in fits, dreams weaving through the night of boardrooms turned ballrooms, Hargrove's face softening into a smile, the warehouse blooming with roses that climbed the walls like hope incarnate. Rose woke to sunlight slanting through the blinds, Clara's arm heavy across her waist, the city awakening with the grind of garbage trucks and distant sirens. They dressed leisurely, Clara in a crisp white blouse that hugged her frame, Rose opting for jeans and a sweater soft as a caress, their morning ritual unbroken but enriched, coffee brewed strong and shared over the kitchen island. As they stepped out into the crisp air, hand in hand down the sidewalk lined with brownstones and steaming manhole covers, Rose felt a shift, subtle as the turn of seasons, from hiding to claiming. The office buzzed differently that day, colleagues offering smiles that lingered, a tray of donuts left anonymously on the reception desk with a note scrawled in Tom's handwriting. "For the saviors." Clara gathered the team mid-morning, not for a speech, but for a walkthrough of the next project. Rose's designs projected large, her voice joining Clara's in seamless harmony, ideas bouncing like sparks in dry tinder. Lunch found them in Washington Square Park, autumn leaves crunching underfoot, the arch looming like a gateway to elsewhere. They sat on a bench, sandwiches unwrapped from paper bags, pigeons strutting hopefully at their feet. Clara fed Rose a bite of her turkey club, laughing when mustard smeared her chin, wiping it away with a napkin and a kiss that drew a few approving glances from passers-by. "It's strange," Rose said, leaning into her side, watching a street musician strum a guitar, notes floating on the breeze. "Being us out here. No filters." Clara nodded, her arm around Rose's shoulders, pulling her closer against the wind. "Good strange. The kind that grows on you like roots in good soil." But the idyll shattered with a buzz from Clara's phone, a text from Hargrove. "Board meeting rescheduled. Urgent. Investors circling back." Rose felt the old tension coil in her gut, but Clara just pocketed the device, her expression calm. "Whatever it is, we face it side by side." "Deal." "Deal," Rose echoed, sealing it with a squeeze of hands, the park alive around them with joggers and dog walkers, life in its messy, vibrant pulse. The boardroom that afternoon was a different beast, polished mahogany and leather chairs arranged in solemn rows, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and fresh printouts. Hargrove sat at Clara's right, his demeanor subdued, while across the table venture capitalists in slim suits tapped pens against notepads, eyes sharp as hawks. Clara launched into the presentation with poise, slides clicking through metrics that painted a picture of resurgence, Rose's visuals underscoring each point with emotional punch. The room leaned in, questions firing like bullets, but Clara parried with facts and vision, her voice unwavering. Then came the pivot, the moment she had prepared for in whispers with Rose the night before. This turnaround, she said, pausing to let the words settle, wasn't born from isolation. It came from partnership. From Rose, she continued, nodding to her at the side of the room, where she stood with portfolio in hand. Her creativity, her heart, infused every decision. And yes, our relationship is part of that. It grounds me, challenges me, makes me better. A hush fell, thicker than before, the investors exchanging glances, Hargrove shifting uncomfortably. One of them, a woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense bob, leaned forward. Bold Ms. Reynolds. But does it risk the brand? Clara smiled, faint but genuine, the kind that crinkled her eyes. Risk is part of growth. Hiding who we are? That's the real hazard. Today's market craves authenticity. Rose's work delivers it, and our story humanizes us. Clients connect with real people, not facades. Rose stepped forward then, her pulse thundering, but her voice clear, honed by years of pitching ideas into voids. Let me show you, she said, flipping open her portfolio to a new series. Mock-ups for a diversity campaign that wove their journey subtly into narratives of resilience. These aren't just ads. They're stories like ours. Vulnerable, true. They'll resonate. The room erupted in discussion, pages turning, heads nodding, the energy shifting from skepticism to intrigue. By meeting's end, handshakes were exchanged, terms floated, a tentative green light on expansion. As the investors filed out, the silver-haired woman paused by Rose, her grip firm. You two have something rare. Don't let the world dim it. Alone with Hargrove, Clara extended a hand. Truce? She asked, her tone light but earnest. He took it, his clasp lingering. You saved my ass today, Reynolds. And the company's. Truce. That evening they escaped the city's clamor for a drive upstate. The Honda hugging curves through the Catskills, leaves a riot of red and gold under a sky bruised with sunset. Rose drove, her foot light on the pedal, Clara's hand on her thigh a constant grounding touch. They stopped at a roadside diner, neon sign flickering Dave's Eats, the interior a time capsule of vinyl booths and jukebox tunes. Over burgers and fries, steam rising in lazy curls, they decompressed, laughter bubbling up as Clara recounted Hargrove's awkward cough during the presentation. You were magnificent, Rose said, dipping a fry in ketchup, her eyes shining. The way you owned it, all of it. Clara reached across the table, capturing her hand. We were. And tonight, under these stars, let's just be. The cabin they rented was a modest A-frame, wood smoke scenting the air, a fireplace crackling as they arrived. No phones, no emails, just the rustle of leaves outside and the pop of embers within. They made love by firelight, bodies slow and exploratory, rediscovering in the flicker of flames, sighs mingling with the wind through cracks in the walls. Lying spent in each other's arms, Rose listened to Clara's heartbeat, steady as a drum, and felt the future unfurl, not as a threat, but as invitation. Whatever came, they would meet it woven together, threads of love stronger than any storm. Winter crept in with the subtlety of a thief, frosting the city windows and turning breaths to visible ghosts on the streets. 2 months after the boardroom revelation, the agency thrived in ways Clara had only sketched in fevered notebooks, new clients flocking like birds to a feeder, Rose's designs the lure that hooked them. But success bred its own shadows, whispers in hallways not of judgment now, but of envy, of what-ifs that gnawed at the edges. Rose noticed it first in small things, A colleague's lingering stare during critiques, a pause in laughter when they entered a room hand in hand. She brushed it off at first, attributing it to her own ghosts, the Ohio echoes that sometimes surfaced in quiet moments, making her question if visibility was truly the gift Clara claimed. One evening, as snow dusted the fire escape outside their shared apartment now, a one-bedroom in the village with Rose's sketches taped to fridge doors, she voiced it over pasta steaming on the stove. "Do you ever feel like we're exhibits, Clara?" she asked, twirling linguine on her fork, sauce clinging like doubt, like they watch us to measure their own courage or lack of it. Clara set down her glass, red wine swirling untouched, and crossed to her, arms encircling from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Sometimes, she admitted, her voice a rumble against Rose's back. But that's their journey, not ours. We light the path even if it blinds a few. The words comforted, but the unease lingered, a low hum beneath the surface. The next week brought it to a head, an industry gala at the Met, chandeliers dripping light like molten gold, gowns whispering across marble floors. Clara looked stunning in emerald silk that matched her eyes, Rose beside her in a simple black dress that hugged her curves, her hair pinned with a clip shaped like a wing, a nod to those childhood drawings. They navigated the crowd, air kisses and business cards exchanged, Clara's laugh drawing admirers like moths. Rose sipped champagne, the bubbles sharp on her tongue, content in the orbit until a cluster of executives cornered them near the Egyptian wing, sarcophagi staring sightless from alcoves. "Bold move coming out like that," one said, a man with a Rolex glinting under cufflinks, his smile all teeth. "Save the firm, they say. But at what cost to your personal brand? Lesbians in boardrooms still raise eyebrows, you know." Clara stiffened, her hand finding Rose's under the tablecloth of a high top, but Rose felt the words land like pebbles in still water, ripples spreading. "Cost," she echoed, her voice steadier than she felt. "What's the cost of silence? Of half-lives?" The group chuckled, polite but edged, dispersing as music swelled, leaving a sour taste. In the coat check later, Rose turned to Clara, cheeks flushed not from wine. "I need air," she said, and they slipped out into the night, Central Park's paths slick with slush, lamps casting halos on the snow. They walked in silence at first, boots crunching, until Rose stopped beneath a bare oak, branches clawing at the stars. "It's not just eyebrows, Clara. It's the way they say it, like we're a risk they tolerate for results. Like our love is a footnote." Clara pulled her close, snowflakes melting on their lashes, her embrace fierce. "Then let's make it the headline. Tomorrow we pitch that diversity line to the gala crowd. Your design's my pitch. We own the narrative." Rose searched her face, the determination there a mirror to her own buried fire, and nodded, the cold seeping in but warmth blooming between them. "Okay. For us." The pitch came a week later, in a rented space overlooking Times Square, billboards flashing like neural fireworks. The same executives attended, alongside influencers and media reps, the room humming with anticipation. Rose unveiled the campaign on a massive screen, visuals pulsing with stories of hidden loves, of breakthroughs and shadows, each frame a testament to resilience, colors vivid as fresh bruises healing. Clara's narration wove through it, her voice passionate, painting not just ads but a movement. "This is authenticity," she concluded, gesturing to Rose at her side. "It's what connects. It's what saves." Questions poured, not skeptical now but probing, excited. Contracts were inked by evening's end, the diversity line greenlit with budgets that made Sarah whoop from the back row. As confetti rained in a surprise pop from Tom, Rose caught Clara's eye, the triumph shared in a glance that said, "See? We endure." But endurance tested them further when spring thawed the streets, bringing with it a personal tempest. Rose's mother called one April afternoon, the line crackling from Ohio, voice tentative but laced with old familiar steel. "Saw your work in a magazine, honey. Proud in a way. But Clara, that's not the path God intended." Rose sat on the fire escape, city bustle below a distant roar, tears hot on her cheeks. She hadn't spoken to her family since coming out, the silence a chasm widened by time. Now this, a bridge extended but rickety, terms unspoken. Clara found her there, a mug of tea in hand, and listened as Rose recounted the call, words tumbling like rain. She's trying, Rose said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. In her way. Invites us for Memorial Day. To talk. To meet you. Clara's brow furrowed, not in rejection but caution, her hand covering Rose's knee. And you want to go? Think so. To show her we're whole. Not broken. The drive to Ohio was a study in contrasts. Urban grit giving way to rolling fields. Clara's sedan eating miles under a sky vast and indifferent. They talked little at first, radio filling the quiet with country twang and classic rock. But as cornstalks flanked the road, words flowed, fears aired like laundry on a line. What if she hates us? Rose wondered aloud, fingers drumming the window. What if it's all for show? Clara glanced over, her profile sharp against the green blur. Then we leave with heads high. But I believe in bridges, Rose. Even shaky ones. The farmhouse stood as Rose remembered, white clapboard weathered but proud, porch swing creaking in the breeze. Her mother waited on the steps, apron dusted with flour, eyes wary but softening at the sight of her daughter. Clara, she said, extending a hand, voice gruff with emotion held in check. Welcome. Dinner was strained at first, pot roast and potatoes steaming on mismatched plates, conversation skirting edges like dancers afraid to touch. Rose's father sat silent, fork scraping china, his pastor's collar a ghost from Sundays past. But Clara bridged gaps with stories, light ones of city mishaps and agency antics, drawing smiles that cracked the ice. Later on the porch as dusk painted the fields lavender, Rose's mother pulled her aside, hands twisting a dish rag. I prayed for straight paths, she confessed, voice cracking. But seeing you, glowing, with her, maybe God's ways are wider than I thought. Tears came then, mother and daughter embracing, the swing swaying gently as Clara watched from the doorway, her own eyes misting. That night, in the guest room with its quilted bed and faint scent of lavender, Rose curled into Clara, whispering gratitude against her neck. You made this possible. Your steadiness. Clara's kiss was featherlight, a promise. Our steadiness. Summer brought heat waves that shimmered the asphalt, the agency expanding into a new floor with views of the East River, hires including a queer artist collective that infused the space with rainbows literal and figurative. Rose thrived, her role evolving to creative director, sketches turning to strategies that echoed her growth, personal woven into professional. Yet a shadow loomed in July, an email from an anonymous source, photos attached, not the cafe kiss but newer ones, snapped outside the office, intimate moments twisted into tabloid fodder. Leaked to a trade rag, the headline screamed. CEO's secret affair. Innovation or indecency? Clara read it at breakfast, her face paling over cereal bowls, but Rose across the table felt anger flare hot and bright. This again, she said, crumpling the printout. After everything? Clara nodded, jaw set. Well, face it. Press conference. Transparency. The conference room filled with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning, questions barbed and probing. Clara stood at the podium, Rose at her side, hands visible and linked. No secrets, Clara began, her voice carrying to the back. Our relationship is public, has been since we chose to save our company with it. These photos? Reminders that love persists, no matter the lens. A reporter pressed, does it affect leadership? Clara laughed, genuine and disarming. It enhances it. Rose inspires me daily. That's the story. The room shifted, notebooks closing, the narrative rested back. By afternoon's end, the piece ran with a new angle. Power couple fuels firm's rise. Fall returned with crisp apples and changing leaves, the agency hosting its first Pride mixer, rooftop under strings of lights, laughter echoing off skyscrapers. Rose and Clara danced slow, bodies close, the city theirs in that moment. As leaves turned, so did chapters. Rose's family visiting for Thanksgiving. Awkward but warming. Her mother's pie a peace offering. Hargrove even toasted them at the holiday party. Words gruff but sincere. To the ones who saved us all. In quiet nights wrapped in each other, Rose traced Clara's spine, marveling at the journey. From disgrace to declaration. Their love a thread pulling life into focus. The new year dawned with a blanket of snow over the city, muffling the horns and hurries into a hushed dreamscape. But for Rose and Clara, it arrived with the sharp clarity of resolutions etched in frost. The agency's success had plateaued into sustainability, projects flowing steady as the seasons, but Clara spoke often now of legacy, of impact beyond balance sheets. One January evening as they bundled against the cold for a walk along the waterfront, her words hung in the air like breath clouds. "I want to mentor," she said, gloved hands swinging between them, scarves trailing like banners. "Young creatives like you were, Rose. Queer kids navigating worlds that don't always bend. Foundation, maybe. Scholarships, workshops." Rose stopped, snowflakes catching in her lashes, her heart swelling with the vision. "That's beautiful. Terrifying but beautiful. Count me in." They launched it in spring, the Reynolds-Taylor Initiative, named for both, a nod to partnership unyielding. The first event was a workshop in a Brooklyn community center, graffiti walls vibrant outside, inside a circle of chairs filled with wide-eyed teens, notebooks clutched like shields. Rose facilitated drawing sessions, her voice gentle as she shared sketches from her youth, wings and whispers of escape. One girl, barely 16 with blue-streaked hair and a tremor in her hands, showed a piece, a figure breaking chains. "This is me," she said softly, "coming out last month." Mom cried but not mad. Inspired. Clara, overseeing logistics, caught Rose's eye across the room, a look that said this is why. Challenges arose, funding dips and skeptical donors, echoes of old battles, but they met them as always, hands joined in strategy sessions that bled into nights of solace, bodies reaffirming in the dark what daylight tested. Hargrove became an unlikely ally, his connections opening doors, grumbling over coffee about how they'd softened him up. Summer found them road-tripping the Pacific Coast Highway, trading skyscrapers for cliffs dropping to turquoise seas, the rental cars top down, wind whipping stories from their lips. In Big Sur they hiked to a hidden cove, waves crashing below, and Clara dropped to one knee, ring glinting in sunlight, sapphires like captured ocean. "Marry me, Rose," she said, voice rough with nerves. "Not for show. For us. Forever." Tears blurred the view, but Rose pulled her up, kissing her fierce. "Yes. 1,000 times." The wedding was intimate, a garden in the Hudson Valley, asters blooming wild, family and friends circled under an arbor draped in lights. Rose's mother walked her down the aisle, hand steady on her arm, eyes bright with unshed emotion. Vows exchanged were simple, promises of standing, of saving each other daily, rings sliding on with whispers of "I do." Honeymoon in the Berkshires, cabins by a lake, days of kayaking and nights of stargazing, love renewed in the quiet lapping of water. Back in the city, life wove forward, the foundation growing, stories pouring in of lives touched, chains broken. Years blurred into a tapestry, the agency evolving into a beacon for inclusive creativity, Rose and Clara at its heart, mentoring not just careers but souls. Children came later, adopted twins with curls and curiosity, their home a haven of laughter and lessons, bedtime stories laced with tales of two women who turned disgrace to declaration. On anniversaries they returned to the warehouse, now a gallery space for emerging artists, panels replaced by works that echoed their own beginnings. One evening as sunset bled orange through grimy windows, Clara pulled Rose close, much as she had that first day. "You saved me," she murmured, forehead to forehead. "Every day since." Rose smiled, fingers in dark hair silvering at the temples. "We saved each other. And everyone after." In the end their story lingered not as scandal, but as sermon, a humanistic hymn to love unapologetic, its notes resonating long after the final chord, reminding that grace blooms where disgrace once took root, in the steady beat of two hearts aligned.